Well, let's return to the story about what's happening in Egypt and the violence there. Ramy Yaacoub is an Egyptian political analyst. He is in Washington, D.C. Ramy Yaacoub, if we could concentrate, first of all, specifically on Port Said, is it possible that if the military and the security forces did allow that violence to happen a year ago in the Port Said Stadium, is it now possible, after these death sentences were passed on these 21 people who the judge says were responsible for perpetrating that violence, could it be argued that the judiciary is now independent of the Egyptian government?
Actually, I don't think so. Unfortunately, I was attending a closed session in Parliament, Egyptian Parliament, about a year ago after the incidents. And there were eyewitnesses that claimed that they have seen military and police forces sealing the doors in the stadium where the 74 victims have died. What we saw today was a verdict for the executioners of the massacre, but not the planners of the massacre.
So it's completely the opposite, are you saying? Is it therefore completely the opposite? The judiciary is still controlled by the military authorities, by the security authorities, by the government?
Look, absolutely, absolutely. Unfortunately, we don't see any separation between all three branches of government, executive, legislative, and judiciary. What's really happening, yes, some of the people who were sentenced today were definitely responsible according to the evidence that we saw, but definitely the people responsible for planning the events were not tried today. And that's why we're seeing a lot of outrage in Port Said, because the families of the people who were sentenced today definitely are outraged simply because the people who instigated the violence or facilitated the environment for the violence to happen were not on trial.
How angry does it make you? How upset are you that 2 years after the fall of Hosni Mubarak, security forces are still using this brute force against civilian protesters?
Look, Adnan, in all honesty, it is absolutely depressing. The Egyptian revolution had so much potential. And I believe that maybe in the future it will have more potential. But unfortunately, what we're seeing today is that there's brutal force used against protesters, excessive violence by security forces. There are videos coming out today out of Suez and Port Said and elsewhere where security forces are simply destroying private property of citizens, even though of citizens that are not resisting or protesting even. Mind you that there over 30 people, some 30 people have been killed, over hundreds and hundreds of Egyptians have been injured in the clashes of an anniversary of a revolution. It is absolutely sad, and to answer your question.
Ramy, just be brief if you can with this final answer. How confident are you in the electoral process after the Constitution was passed? It's now legally a requirement that elections have to be held, and they'll be held now, what, within about 6 or 7 weeks? They have to be held. Are you confident in those elections?
Supposedly in 6 to 7 weeks, as you just said. But as a person who managed 3 campaigns on the ground during the first parliamentary elections post-revolution, I can tell you little has changed in the archaic and rather kind of primitive ways of electoral processes in Egypt. Unfortunately, no, I am not confident in the process. Without a proper monitoring, whether it's international or reliable domestic monitoring of the elections, unfortunately, there's so much room for plagiarism, so much room for fraud, and without clear guidance for the upcoming parliamentary elections, unfortunately, we're going to see results that do not reflect the Egyptian society.
Ramy Yaacoub, we appreciate your time. Thank you very much.